How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. A timeless guide to human relations. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, first published in 1936, remains an unparalleled classic in the self-help and personal development genre. Born in 1888, Carnegie was a pioneer in public speaking and human relations, whose insights were forged through years of teaching and real-world application. The book emerged from his adult education courses, where he taught practical skills for communication, leadership, and influencing others. Its enduring popularity stems from its fundamental premise: success in life, both personal and professional, hinges significantly on one's ability to effectively interact with and understand others. Carnegie's core philosophy is deeply humanistic. He posits that genuine influence comes not from manipulation, but from a sincere interest in others, empathy, and the ability to make people feel valued and understood. The book is less about winning in a competitive sense and more about fostering harmonious relationships built on mutual respect and cooperation. It emphasizes that by changing our attitudes and behaviors towards others, we can dramatically improve our interactions and achieve our goals. The book's principles are rooted in fundamental human psychology, focusing on our innate desires for recognition, importance, and connection. Part 1. Fundamental Techniques in Handling People. This section lays the groundwork for all subsequent principles, stressing the critical importance of understanding human nature. Carnegie argues that our initial reactions often lead to conflict, and true effectiveness comes from a shift in perspective. Principle 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Explanation. This principle emphasizes the futility and destructive nature of criticism. Carnegie asserts that judging or complaining about others rarely achieves the desired outcome. Instead, it often breeds resentment, defensiveness, and undermines relationships. Deep analysis. Psychologically, people are driven by ego and a desire to feel important. When criticized, our natural instinct is to justify ourselves and retaliate. We rarely, if ever, admit we are wrong, especially under duress. Criticism attacks a person's sense of self-worth, making them resistant to change and fostering bitterness. It doesn't inspire improvement. It merely creates enemies and diminishes goodwill. Illustrative examples. The story of Abraham Lincoln and General Meade. Lincoln, known for his wisdom, learned this principle early. After General Meade failed to pursue Lee's retreating army after the Battle of Gettysburg, Lincoln drafted a scathing letter. However, he never sent it, realizing that his harsh words would likely demoralize Meade rather than spur him to action. Lincoln understood that criticizing a man already under immense pressure would serve no constructive purpose. The story of Captain M.J. Gilmartin. Gilmartin, a police officer, initially found it easy to criticize minor traffic offenders. However, he realized that scolding them only made them resentful. When he changed his approach to understanding their perspective and offering a friendly warning, people reacted positively, often apologizing and taking responsibility. This shift saved time, fostered goodwill, and actually reduced repeat offenses more effectively than fines. The story of Mrs. Ernest Gent. Mrs. Gent hired a gardener who did a poor job. Instead of criticizing him, she found something to praise first. Your lawn mowing is truly exceptional, before gently suggesting ways to improve other areas. Because she started with praise and avoided direct criticism, the gardener was receptive and improved his work without feeling attacked. Practical application. In daily life, before you speak, ask yourself, will this criticism build or destroy? In the workplace, focus on constructive feedback rather than blame. For instance, instead of saying, your report is sloppy, try, this report has some great points, and with a bit more attention to detail, it could be even stronger. In personal relationships, bite your tongue when tempted to complain about small annoyances. Instead, try to understand the other person's viewpoint or simply let it go. Principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. Explanation. This principle advocates for the power of genuine praise and recognition. Carnegie argues that the deepest craving of human nature is the desire to be appreciated and feel important. When we sincerely acknowledge someone's efforts, talents, or qualities, we tap into this fundamental need. Deep analysis. Every individual, regardless of their status, yearns for recognition. We thrive on the feeling that our existence matters, that our contributions are valued. Carnegie distinguishes appreciation from flattery. Flattery is insincere, self-serving, and often recognized as false. True appreciation, however, comes from the heart, is specific, and genuinely acknowledges the other person's worth. When someone feels truly appreciated, it boosts their morale, encourages them to do more, and fosters loyalty and affection. It satisfies the ego in a positive, constructive way. Illustrative examples. The story of Charles Schwab. The legendary steel magnate, Charles Schwab, attributed much of his success to his ability to inspire enthusiasm in his workers. He said, I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people the greatest asset I possess. And the way to develop the best that is in a man is by appreciation and encouragement. He would often praise his employees for their good work, even small improvements, making them feel valued and inspiring them to greater achievements. He famously said, I am hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise. The story of Mrs. George Dibble. Mrs. Dibble's maid was often negligent with details. Instead of nagging, Mrs. Dibble decided to praise the maid for keeping the house exceptionally tidy. This genuine praise motivated the maid to pay more attention to all aspects of her work, not just tidiness. The maid felt valued for her effort, leading to overall improvement. The story of Theodore Roosevelt and his cook. Roosevelt, despite his powerful position, would go out of his way to praise his cook's excellent meals. He didn't just eat, he expressed his appreciation, making the cook feel important and respected, thereby ensuring continued excellent service. Practical application. In professional settings, make it a habit to recognize colleagues' achievements, even small ones. A sincere, great job on that presentation, or I really appreciate your help with that project, can go a long way. In personal relationships, express gratitude for your loved one's efforts. Tell your partner, thank you for making dinner tonight. It was delicious. Or tell your child, I'm so proud of how hard you studied for that test. The key is to be specific and heartfelt, genuinely finding something praiseworthy in others. Principle 3. Arouse in the other person an eager want. Explanation. This principle is about understanding what motivates others and framing your requests or ideas in terms of their desires, not your own. Instead of telling people what you want them to do, show them how doing it will benefit them. Deep analysis. Carnegie asserts that the only way to influence people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. Every action a person takes stems from their own wants and needs. Trying to force your will or appeal to your own desires will often lead to resistance. However, if you can connect your request to their self-interest, whether it's security, recognition, financial gain, or improved well-being, you create a powerful incentive for them to act. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding empathy and finding common ground where both parties benefit. Illustrative examples. The story of John D. Rockefeller Sr. and his son. When his son was ready to start a family, Rockefeller Sr. did not order him to stop smoking and drinking, though he disapproved. Instead, he presented his son with a report showing how these habits could negatively affect health and finances, thus appealing to the son's desire for a long, healthy life and financial security. The story of the child who wouldn't eat breakfast. Carnegie's own son, Dale Jr., was a fussy eater. Instead of forcing him to eat his oatmeal, Carnegie's wife created a game where Dale Jr. pretended to be a train shoveling coal into its engine. By making breakfast a fun activity linked to his interest in trains, they aroused his eager want to power the engine, and he ate his oatmeal with enthusiasm. The story of the company, seeking a new accountant. A company needed a new accountant, but the only candidate they liked had a salary expectation far exceeding their budget. Instead of refusing, the CEO explained the challenges of the position, the demanding hours, and the potential for immense personal growth and exposure to high-level operations, appealing to the candidate's desire for learning and career advancement rather than just money. This led the candidate to accept a lower salary, eager for the experience. Practical application. When trying to persuade someone, put yourself in their shoes. If you're trying to sell a product, don't just list its features. Explain how it solves their problems or fulfills their desires. If you want a colleague to help you with a task, explain how assisting you might lighten their future workload, provide them with new skills, or contribute to a team goal that benefits everyone. In personal relationships, instead of demanding something, illustrate how fulfilling your request will make their life better or happier. For example, if you want your partner to clean the house, instead of saying, "Clean the house," you might say, "Let's clean up together quickly so we can relax and enjoy a movie tonight." Part 2. 6 Ways to Make People Like You. This section focuses on the foundational principles for building genuine fondness and strong relationships. Carnegie emphasizes that being liked doesn't come from trying to please everyone, but from demonstrating sincere interest and positive regard for others. Principle 4. Become genuinely interested in other people. Explanation. This principle asserts that to gain the interest of others, you must first show sincere interest in them. Humans are inherently self-centered, and they care more about themselves than about anyone else. Deep analysis. Psychologically, every individual has a strong ego stream flowing within them. When you show genuine interest in what they say, what they do, their dreams, and their aspirations, you are pouring water into that stream. This makes them feel seen, heard, and valued. Insincere interest is easily detected and will backfire, but genuine interest creates a powerful bond. Illustrative examples. The story of J.C. Penney. The founder of the Penny department store chain was highly successful in building his business network by genuinely caring about each employee and customer. He remembered their names and personal circumstances, often chatting about their individual interests, making everyone feel they were an important part of the company, not just an employee or customer. The story of Theodore Roosevelt. He was one of the most beloved presidents. Part of this was due to his astonishing ability to recall the names of thousands of people, from janitors and housekeepers to world leaders, and to ask about their families or hobbies. When he met a hunter, he might ask about a specific type of gun the person used. This made people feel he truly cared about them as individuals. The example of a dog, Sparky. Carnegie often used the example of how dogs can make us feel loved. A dog doesn't ask how much money you make or how smart you are. It just runs up, wags its tail, and jumps with joy when it sees you. That's unconditional and sincere interest, and that's why we adore dogs. Practical application. In daily life, practice active listening when others speak. Ask open-ended questions about their lives, work, and interests. Instead of always talking about yourself, shift the focus to the other person. In business, learn about your customers, not just in terms of transactions, but also on a personal level. Sarchi, wishing them a happy birthday, asking about their children. This builds trust and lasting connections. Principle 5. Smile. Explanation. A sincere smile is a universal language with the power to radiate joy and friendliness. It signals that you are approachable, positive, and open. Deep analysis. Smiling has a powerful psychological effect. When you smile, your brain releases endorphins, making you feel better. More importantly, a smile is a non-verbal invitation. It breaks down barriers, signals safety, and conveys goodwill. We tend to trust and feel more comfortable with people who smile. A genuine smile can transform a cold encounter into a warm connection. Carnegie famously said, "Actions speak louder than words." A smile says, "I like you. I'm glad to see you." Key. Illustrative examples. The story of a depressed father and his son. A father in New York in a gloomy mood after a bad day at work often frowned. His son said, "Daddy, why don't you smile?" The boy's words woke him up. He started smiling at everyone he met on the street and received countless smiles in return. He realized that a smile is an antidote to stress and fatigue, and it has the power to change both his day and others. The example of a customer service representative. A customer service representative always maintained a smile on her face, even when speaking on the phone. Customers could sense her friendliness and willingness to help through her voice, which helped her resolve issues more effectively and receive many compliments. Dale Carnegie's own practice. Carnegie often encouraged his students to practice smiling. He stated that even when you don't feel like it, try to smile. The physical act of smiling can actually change your mood and make you feel more positive. Practical application. Start your day with a smile in the mirror. When meeting colleagues, clients, or friends, greet them with a sincere smile. Even when talking on the phone, try smiling. Your smile will come through in your voice. In meetings, a smile can help diffuse tension and create an open atmosphere. Principle 6. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Explanation. This principle highlights the immense power of calling someone by their name. A person's name is not just a label, it's a core part of their individual identity, intrinsically linked to their sense of uniqueness and importance. Deep analysis. A person's name is uniquely special to them. It's how they are first recognized, and it represents everything they are. When you remember and use someone's name, you send a powerful message that you value them, you respect them, and you consider their presence important. Conversely, forgetting or mispronouncing a name can make someone feel dismissed or unimportant. This is a simple yet incredibly effective way to build rapport and goodwill. Illustrative examples. The story of Franklin D. Roosevelt. President. Roosevelt was renowned for his extraordinary memory for names. He not only remembered the names of world leaders, but also of ordinary soldiers, gardeners, or even the most junior staff. He would greet them by name and ask about their families, making them feel incredibly special and valued by the most powerful man in the world. The story of Andrew Carnegie. Steel magnate Andrew Carnegie paid millions to hire Charles Schwab as his executive. Schwab said that Carnegie's ability to deal with people, and especially to remember their names, was one of the main reasons he became such a great leader. Carnegie would take the time to learn the names of his workers, even their nicknames, and that made them feel valued by their employer. The example of a successful salesperson. A successful salesperson always remembered the names of each customer, even learning the names of their children. When they returned to the store, he would greet them by name and ask about their families. This created a strong personal connection, turning casual customers into loyal ones. Practical application. When introduced, repeat the person's name immediately to help you remember it. For example, "It's so nice to meet you," their name. During conversation, find opportunities to use their name naturally and politely. If you have trouble remembering names, create memory aids, e.g., associate the name with an image or a rhyme. Showing this respect is one of the quickest ways to make a good impression and build trust. Principle 7. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. Explanation. This principle highlights the immense power of attentive listening. People deeply appreciate those who genuinely listen to them, allowing them to express their thoughts, feelings, and experiences without interruption. Deep analysis. Psychologically, talking about oneself is inherently satisfying. It allows individuals to process thoughts, validate their experiences, and feel important. When you actively listen, you are providing a platform for the other person to fulfill this need. It sends a message that you value their opinions and respect their perspectives. Carnegie notes that even bitter complainers often just want a sympathetic, patient listener to hear them out. Effective listening is a profound compliment, fostering trust and rapport. Illustrative examples. The story of a physician's insight. A brilliant physician often told his medical students that his best diagnostic tool was not his stethoscope, but his ears. He encouraged his patients to talk freely and openly, listening intently to their life stories, not just their symptoms. This approach not only helped him understand their ailments better, but also built a deep sense of trust and comfort with his patients. The example of a young interviewer. A young interviewer, nervous about a high-profile interview, decided to focus entirely on asking insightful questions and genuinely listening to the answers. Instead of trying to impress, he encouraged the interviewee to talk about their achievements and challenges. The interviewee left feeling incredibly positive about the conversation, remarking on how the interviewer was a brilliant conversationalist, even though the interviewer mostly listened. The practice in sales. A highly successful insurance salesperson rarely talked about policies initially. Instead, he would ask clients about their lives, their families, their dreams, and their worries, listening carefully to their responses. By truly understanding their needs and concerns, he could then present solutions that directly addressed what they wanted, leading to more successful sales and loyal clients. Practical application. In conversations, resist the urge to interrupt or formulate your next response. Instead, focus entirely on what the other person is saying, both verbally and non-verbally. Ask follow-up questions that encourage them to elaborate. For example, instead of saying, "That happened to me too," try, "That sounds interesting. Tell me more about how you handled that." In meetings, give your full attention to the speaker. In personal relationships, make dedicated time to simply listen to your loved ones share their day, their joys, and their frustrations. Principle 8. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. Explanation. This principle advises that to capture someone's attention and goodwill, you should discuss subjects that are relevant and engaging to them, rather than always talking about your own interests. Deep analysis. People are primarily interested in themselves and what directly affects them. If you want to connect with someone, you must tap into their passions, hobbies, concerns, and goals. When you speak about topics they care about, their minds open up, and they become more receptive to you and your ideas. It demonstrates that you've made an effort to understand them and that you value their world. It's a powerful way to bridge gaps and create common ground. Illustrative examples. The story of Theodore Roosevelt and his guests. Roosevelt would spend hours before meeting a guest studying up on subjects he knew interested them. If a guest was a cowboy, he'd read about cattle ranching. If they were a botanist, he'd brush up on plants. This preparation allowed him to engage them in conversations about their specific interests, making them feel instantly comfortable and impressed by his knowledge and genuine interest. The example of the store clerk and the Girl Scout. A young girl came into a store wanting to buy a small item for her Girl Scout camp. Instead of just completing the transaction, the clerk asked her about her camp, what activities she enjoyed, and what badges she was working on. The girl, excited to talk about her passion, chatted happily, and her mother, observing the interaction, was deeply impressed by the clerk's genuine interest. The meeting with the automobile manufacturer. A businessman wanted to sell parts to a major automobile manufacturer. Instead of immediately pitching his products, he researched the manufacturer's new innovative electric vehicle project, which he knew was a passion project for the CEO. He opened the conversation by asking thoughtful questions about the challenges and triumphs of this project. The CEO, thrilled to discuss his favorite topic, soon saw the businessman as a valuable partner, not just another vendor. Practical application. Before meeting someone, do a little research. Find out their hobbies, professional background, or recent achievements. When you start a conversation, bring up a topic you know they care about. For example, I heard you're a big fan of sports team genre of music. How do you feel about recent event? In a business context, understand your client's industry, their company's challenges, and their personal, professional goals. Frame your proposals in terms of how they benefit the client's specific interests. Principle 9, make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. Explanation. This is arguably the most fundamental and powerful principle in the book. People crave to feel important. When you genuinely make someone feel significant and valued, you tap into their deepest human need. Deep analysis. The desire to be important is a primal human hunger, often described as the deepest urge in human nature. It drives us to achieve, to seek recognition, and to strive for greatness. When this craving is satisfied, even in small ways, people respond with loyalty, cooperation, and warmth. Sincerity is key. Flattery is telling people what they want to hear, whether it's true or not. Genuine appreciation is finding something truly admirable and expressing it from the heart. It's about recognizing their inherent worth and specific contributions. This principle makes people feel respected and valued, making them receptive to your influence. Illustrative examples. The story of Charles Schwab and his employees. Charles Schwab, mentioned earlier, famously said, "I have yet to find a person, however great or exalted his station, who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under a spirit of approval than under a spirit of criticism." He would make his steelworkers feel important by praising their skill, acknowledging their hard work, and asking for their opinions on complex problems. This made them feel like partners, not just cogs in a machine. The example of a waiter in a busy restaurant, always made eye contact, smiled, and paid attention to each customer, asking, "What can I do to make your meal perfect tonight?" He treated each customer as if they were the most important person in the room, making them feel special and appreciated, leading to excellent tips and repeat business. The practice of the bank president. A bank president, even with a long line of people, always took a moment to personally greet each customer, remember their name, and perhaps even ask about their family or a hobby they had discussed before. This made every customer, from a small account holder to a large business owner, feel genuinely important to the bank. Practical application. Look for opportunities to genuinely compliment others, praise their efforts, acknowledge their contributions, or recognize their unique talents. Ask for their advice or opinion on a matter, showing that you value their wisdom. For instance, I'm facing a challenge with X, and given your experience in Y, I'd really value your thoughts on how to approach it. Delegate tasks that give others responsibility and authority. In personal life, tell your loved ones what you admire about them. Thank them for their specific actions and celebrate their successes, making them feel truly cherished and indispensable. Part 3. How to win people to your way of thinking. This crucial section delves into the subtle yet powerful art of persuasion, focusing on how to influence others to embrace your ideas without generating resentment or opposition. Carnegie teaches that true influence doesn't come from argument or coercion, but from understanding, respect, and helping others feel ownership of the ideas. Principle 10. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Explanation. Carnegie asserts that arguments are almost always counterproductive. You might win an argument on a logical point, but in doing so, you often lose the goodwill and respect of the other person. You can't truly win an argument because if you lose, you lose. And if you win, you still lose, as you've likely hurt the other person's pride. Deep analysis. Psychologically, when people are challenged, their defenses go up. Their ego becomes involved, and they become more entrenched in their position, regardless of the facts. Winning an argument often means making the other person feel inferior or wrong, which is a blow to their self-esteem. This creates bitterness and resentment, making future cooperation difficult. Carnegie wisely states, "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." True influence comes from encouraging a change of heart, not forcing a change of mind through intellectual combat. Illustrative examples. The example of Patrick J. O'Hare. O'Hare, a truck salesman, used to argue vehemently with customers who criticized his trucks. He often won the arguments, proving his trucks were superior. However, he quickly realized that while he won the debates, he lost sales. No one wanted to buy from a person who made them feel foolish. He learned to avoid arguments, listen, and focus on mutual understanding, which dramatically improved his sales. The story of Benjamin Franklin. Franklin, known for his wisdom and diplomacy, attributed much of his success to learning to avoid arguments. In his youth, he was argumentative, but he soon realized it alienated people. He adopted a habit of gentle assertion, saying things like, "I conceive," "I imagine," or "it appears to me," rather than declarative statements, which fostered more receptive discussions. The lesson from a client dispute. A client once disputed a large bill with an advertising executive. The executive's first instinct was to argue point by point. However, remembering Carnegie's principle, he decided to listen patiently, let the client vent, and find points of agreement. By avoiding direct confrontation, he managed to resolve the dispute amicably and retain the client's business, which would have been lost had he chosen to argue. Practical applications. In business, when a colleague or client disagrees, instead of jumping to defend your position, listen first. Let them express their viewpoint fully. Acknowledge their feelings, even if you don't agree with their premise. Focus on finding common ground and shared objectives rather than dissecting differences. In personal relationships, avoid getting drawn into petty disagreements. Sometimes, agreeing to disagree or simply changing the subject is the most constructive path. Remember, your goal is to maintain the relationship, not to be right. Principle 11. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say, "You're wrong." Explanation. This principle builds on the previous one, emphasizing the importance of treating others' opinions with dignity, even if you disagree. Directly telling someone they are wrong is a direct assault on their intelligence, judgment, and pride, and it guarantees resistance. Deep analysis. People are deeply invested in their beliefs and ideas, To tell them they are wrong is to tell them that their thinking process is flawed, which is profoundly insulting. This triggers a defensive reaction and makes them close off to any further communication. Carnegie points out that we ourselves often make mistakes, and we don't appreciate being bluntly corrected. Instead, by showing respect, you create an environment where the other person feels safe and heard, making them far more likely to consider an alternative viewpoint. Illustrative examples. The wisdom of Galileo. Galileo famously said, "You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him discover it within himself." This aligns perfectly with Carnegie's principle. Instead of telling someone they're wrong, guide them to a different conclusion through questions or shared facts, allowing them to discover the truth themselves. The approach of a salesman. A shoe salesman dealt with a customer who insisted a particular shoe size was wrong, even though the salesman knew it was correct. Instead of arguing, the salesman simply said, "I understand your concern about the fit. Perhaps we can try a different pair, or try this one, again to see if it feels different." By not directly contradicting the customer, he avoided a confrontation and eventually helped the customer find the right size and feel satisfied. The experience of a young lawyer. A young lawyer, fresh out of school, was eager to correct everyone. He would often start sentences with, "That's wrong, actually," or "No, you're mistaken." While he might have been factually correct, he quickly found himself isolated and ineffective because no one wanted to work with him. He learned to rephrase his corrections, saying things like, "That's an interesting point. Have you considered X?" Or, "My understanding is Y, but I could be wrong." Practical application. When someone expresses an opinion you disagree with, use phrases that soften your disagreement. Instead of "That's wrong," try, "I see your point, but I've also heard that," or "That's an interesting perspective. I've been looking at it from a slightly different angle." Or, "I could be mistaken, but my understanding is." This allows for a conversation rather than a confrontation. In professional settings, frame your alternative ideas as suggestions or additional considerations rather than outright corrections. Principle 12. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Explanation. This principle highlights the immense power of taking responsibility for your mistakes. When you admit you're wrong, you disarm the other person, earn their respect, and often prompt them to become more understanding and forgiving. Deep analysis. Psychologically, when someone is about to criticize you or point out your mistake, they are often in a state of confrontation. By admitting your error first, you take the wind out of their sails. You remove their reason to attack, and instead, they are often inclined to be generous and even supportive. It shows humility, integrity, and a willingness to learn, qualities that build trust and rapport. Dale Carnegie states, "Any fool can try to defend his mistakes, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to admit errors." Illustrative examples. The story of the author and the police officer. Dale Carnegie himself recounted an incident where he was walking his dog without a leash in a park where it was forbidden. A police officer was about to reprimand him. Before the officer could speak, Carnegie immediately admitted his fault, acknowledged the officer's authority, and expressed regret. The officer, disarmed by Carnegie's candid admission, responded kindly and merely gave a warning rather than a fine. The experience of a company executive. An executive made a significant error in a presentation to a major client. Instead of trying to cover it up or blame someone else, he immediately emailed the client, admitting his mistake, apologizing sincerely, and outlining steps to correct it. The client, instead of being angry, was impressed by his honesty and transparency, and their trust in him actually increased. The case of a foreman and his worker. A foreman mistakenly accused a worker of wasting materials. Before the worker could defend himself, the foreman, after checking the records, realized his error. He immediately went to the worker, apologized publicly, and admitted his mistake. This act of humility not only preserved the worker's dignity, but also strengthened the trust and respect among the entire team. Practical application. If you make a mistake, don't hesitate to own it. A simple, "You're absolutely right, I messed up on that," or "My apologies, I overlooked that detail," can diffuse tension immediately. In meetings, if you present incorrect information, correct yourself promptly and clearly. This builds your credibility as someone who is honest and accountable. In personal relationships, admitting when you're wrong fosters forgiveness and strengthens bonds, showing you value the relationship more than your ego. Principle 13. Begin in a friendly way. Explanation. This principle advises that when you approach someone with a point of disagreement or a request, always start with warmth, friendliness, and a cooperative tone. A friendly approach disarms the other person and makes them receptive, while aggression or hostility immediately creates defensiveness. Deep analysis. Human nature instinctively mirrors the emotion it receives. If you approach someone with anger, you'll likely get anger back. If you approach with friendliness, you invite a similar response. A warm, open demeanor, accompanied by a sincere smile, bypasses the natural fight or flight response and appeals to the other person's better nature. It signals that you are seeking cooperation, not conflict, and that you value the relationship more than winning a point. Illustrative examples. The story of the strike at the Pullman Company. When a large strike broke out at the Pullman Company, the company president, Mr. George F. Pullman, was initially confrontational. However, when Dale Carnegie advised him to approach the striking workers with friendliness and a sincere desire to understand their grievances, the atmosphere shifted. By offering to meet and genuinely listen, rather than issuing demands, he was able to open lines of communication and eventually resolve the dispute. The case of the delinquent account. A debt collector often failed to collect from difficult clients. His supervisor suggested he try starting with a friendly, sympathetic tone, rather than an accusatory one. Instead of, "You haven't paid your bill," he began saying, "I just wanted to check in and see how things are going. I understand sometimes things get tough, and I want to see if we can work something out." This friendly opening dramatically increased his collection rates because clients felt understood, not attacked. The story of Two Gun Crowley. Even hardened criminals like Two Gun Crowley, a notorious killer, didn't see themselves as evil. They always found justifications for their actions. This illustrates that direct confrontation or accusations are unlikely to be effective. A friendly, non-judgmental approach, even in extreme cases, is far more likely to elicit a positive response than condemnation. Practical application. When you need to address a problem or ask for something, Take a moment to compose yourself and adopt a pleasant tone. Begin with common ground, positive observations, or a genuine compliment. For example, instead of, "Your report is late," try, "I know you've been working hard on this project. Could we discuss the timeline for that report?" In personal interactions, if you need to bring up a sensitive topic, start by expressing affection or appreciation before gently introducing the issue. Principle 14. Get the other person saying yes, yes immediately. Explanation. This principle suggests that when you're trying to influence someone, begin by discussing points on which you both agree. This builds momentum and creates a positive psychological framework for agreement, making it harder for them to say no later. Deep analysis. Psychologically, when a person says no, their entire system, glands, nerves, muscles, tends to contract in a protective, resistant stance. Conversely, when they say yes, their system opens up. By getting a series of yeses early on, you steer the conversation towards cooperation and reduce their inclination to be adversarial. It establishes common ground and makes them feel aligned with you, setting the stage for future agreement. Illustrative examples. The story of Professor Overstreet. Professor Harry A. Overstreet, in his book, Influencing Human Behavior, highlighted this technique. He explained that a no response is a most difficult handicap to overcome. When a customer says no to a salesman, their pride demands consistency, making it hard to change their mind. A skilled salesperson, therefore, aims for yes responses from the start. The example of the bank teller. A bank teller used to argue with customers about bank policies. He found that clients would become stubborn. He then started by asking, "Do you want to save money? Do you want to feel secure? Do you agree that a safe bank is important?" Each yes built rapport. When he then explained the policy, framed as a benefit, customers were much more receptive. The story of the union leader and the factory owner. A union leader, instead of starting with demands, began a negotiation by asking the factory owner if he believed in fair wages and good working conditions, knowing the owner would say yes. He then followed with questions about productivity and loyalty. By building on these agreements, he created an atmosphere where a compromise on the controversial issues became possible. Practical application. When presenting an idea or a proposal, identify points of agreement first. Ask questions that are structured to elicit a yes response. For example, "We both agree on the importance of X." Correct? Or, "You're looking for a solution that is both effective and cost-efficient, right?" This primes the other person to be in an affirmative mindset. In personal relationships, when trying to resolve a conflict, start by acknowledging shared values or goals before addressing the specific issue. Principle 15. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. Explanation. This principle emphasizes the importance of giving others ample opportunity to express themselves fully. People love to talk about themselves and their ideas. By allowing them to do so, you not only learn valuable information, but also make them feel important and respected. Deep analysis. We all have an innate desire to be heard and understood. When someone truly listens to us, it satisfies our ego and makes us feel significant. Interrupting or dominating a conversation can make the other person feel dismissed and unimportant. leading to resentment. Conversely, by encouraging them to talk, you create a sense of trust and rapport, making them more open to your influence. People are more likely to be persuaded by ideas they feel they've contributed to, or even discovered themselves. Illustrative examples. The practice of the Harvard professor. A Harvard professor, known for his ability to connect with students, often gave them the floor during discussions. He would ask thought-provoking questions and then patiently listen, allowing students to explore their ideas and arrive at their own conclusions. This made students feel valued and engaged, fostering deeper learning and respect for the professor. The salesperson's insight. A top salesperson explained that his success wasn't due to brilliant presentations, but to being a brilliant listener. He would let prospects talk for an hour, asking open-ended questions, taking notes, and letting them articulate their needs and desires. By the end, the solution often became obvious to the client themselves, and the salesperson merely helped them formalize it. The story of President Wilson and Colonel House. President Woodrow Wilson sought the advice of Colonel Edward M. House on all matters. House's secret was simple. He listened. He never offered opinions unless asked, and when he did, he made sure to frame them in a way that made Wilson feel the idea was his own. He would let Wilson talk and talk, making him feel important and valued. Practical application. In any discussion, consciously aim to speak less and listen more. Ask open-ended questions like, "What are your thoughts on this?" Or, "Can you tell me more about your experience with that?" Let them complete their thoughts without interruption. In brainstorming sessions, encourage everyone to contribute their ideas before you present your own. In personal conversations, give your full, undivided attention and allow the other person to lead the discussion as much as they need to. Principle 16. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. Explanation. This principle is about planting seeds, not dictating conclusions. People are far more likely to embrace an idea if they believe it originated with them, or at least that they played a significant role in its development. Deep analysis. Our ego makes us resistant to being told what to do or think. However, if we feel ownership over an idea, our pride compels us to champion it. This principle leverages the human desire for self-importance and autonomy. Instead of directly presenting your idea, guide the other person through a series of questions or observations that lead them to the same conclusion, allowing them to discover it. This makes them invested in the outcome and more likely to act upon it. Illustrative examples. The story of Colonel Edward M. House and President Wilson. As mentioned before, Colonel House's influence on President Wilson was largely due to this principle. He would subtly suggest ideas, discuss possibilities, and let Wilson believe he had come up with them himself. Wilson would often champion these ideas with great conviction, never realizing they were initially planted by House. The example of the better idea. Contest. An industrial company was struggling with a complex problem. Instead of management imposing a solution, they launched an internal better idea contest, inviting all employees to submit their proposals. This made employees feel valued and invested, and the best solution eventually emerged from within the ranks, adopted with widespread enthusiasm because it was their idea. The experience of a teacher. A teacher wanted her students to come up with a solution to a classroom problem. Instead of telling them what to do, she facilitated a discussion, asking questions like, "What do you think is causing this?" And "What are some ways we could make this better?" The students brainstormed solutions, and when they agreed on a plan, they implemented it enthusiastically because it was their plan, not hers. Practical application. When you have an idea, present it as a question or a suggestion for consideration. For example, "What if we tried?" Or "Have you considered this approach?" Instead of stating your opinion as fact, say, "It just occurred to me that perhaps we could." Or, "I wonder if there might be another way to look at this." This invites collaboration rather than dictating. In team settings, facilitate discussions to allow team members to shape the ideas, even if you're guiding them towards a predetermined outcome. Part 4. Be a leader. How to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. This final section of Dale Carnegie's masterpiece focuses on leadership principles and how to influence changes in others' behavior without resorting to criticism or resentment. It's about inspiring improvement and guiding action with tact, empathy, and respect. Principle 17. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. Explanation. When you need to point out a mistake or suggest an improvement, always start by genuinely acknowledging something positive about the person or their work. This softens the blow of criticism and makes the other person more receptive to hearing what you have to say. Deep analysis. Psychologically, beginning with praise fulfills the deep human need to feel appreciated. It creates a positive emotional buffer, making the person feel valued before any potentially negative feedback is delivered. This reduces defensiveness and opens their mind to constructive suggestions. Carnegie compares it to a dentist using Novocaine before drilling. The initial positive feeling lessens the pain of the subsequent correction. Illustrative examples. The story of Abraham Lincoln and General Meade. After Meade failed to pursue Lee's army at Gettysburg, Lincoln, though furious, recognized Meade's previous victories. He might have started by saying, "General Meade, your strategic planning at Gettysburg was brilliant, and your victory saved the Union. However, I have concerns about the follow-up." This hypothetical opening, even if unstated, reflects the principle of starting with praise. The example of a sales manager. A sales manager needed to address an employee's falling sales numbers. Instead of immediately bringing up the decline, he started by saying, "Sarah, your enthusiasm and ability to connect with clients are truly outstanding. I've always admired your positive attitude. Now, about your recent sales figures, let's look at them together." This approach made Sarah feel seen and valued, making her more open to discussing solutions. The case of a child's homework. A parent sees their child has made many errors on their homework. Instead of saying, "This is full of mistakes," they might say, "You did a fantastic job understanding the core concepts here, and your effort is clear. Let's just review these couple of tricky areas to make sure everything's perfect." This encourages the child without crushing their spirit. Practical application. Before offering feedback, consciously think of something genuine to praise. "I really appreciate your dedication to this project, and I've noticed X is going well. I have a suggestion regarding Y that might make it even better." In personal relationships, if you need to discuss a difficult topic, preface it with an affirmation of your love or appreciation for the person. Principle 18. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. Explanation. Instead of directly pointing out flaws, Subtly imply mistakes or present them in a way that allows the other person to draw their own conclusions. Direct criticism, even when preceded by praise, can still sting. Deep analysis. This principle leverages the human tendency to resist being told they are wrong. When you indirectly highlight an issue, you give the other person dignity and the opportunity to save face. It allows them to perceive the problem themselves without feeling lectured or humiliated. This method is less confrontational and more likely to lead to genuine self-correction. Illustrative examples. The story of Charles Schwab and the mill accident. One day, Charles Schwab walked through a mill and saw workers smoking under a no-smoking sign. Instead of lecturing them, he simply handed each man a cigar and said, "I'd appreciate it, boys, if you'd smoke these outside." This indirect approach, combined with a friendly gesture, was far more effective than direct confrontation, as it allowed them to correct their behavior without feeling criticized. The example of a manager and a messy desk. A manager wanted an employee to keep their desk tidier. Instead of saying, "Your desk is a mess," she might say, "Our department is getting an award for organization next week, and I want to make sure everyone's workspace reflects the pride we take in our work. Do you need any help with filing or decluttering?" This subtly points out the issue without directly accusing. The story of a teacher and a student's essay. A teacher received an essay with excellent ideas but poor grammar. Instead of writing grammar errors all over the paper, she might write a general note. "Fantastic insights. Let's schedule a time to review some of the technical aspects to make your writing even stronger." This focuses on improvement, not just errors. Practical application. When addressing an issue, use "and" instead of "but." If you must link praise and criticism, e.g., "Your report is well researched," and it would be even stronger with clearer data visualization. Or frame the issue as a general observation or a question. "It seems we're facing a challenge with X. What do you think we could do to improve it?" This helps the person feel involved in the solution rather than being the target of a problem. Principle 19. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. Explanation. Before addressing someone else's mistake, admit your own past or current imperfections, especially if they are related to the issue at hand. This establishes humility and empathy, making your criticism much easier for the other person to accept. Deep analysis. This principle is incredibly powerful because it disarms the other person's defensiveness. When you admit your own flaws, you demonstrate that you are human, imperfect, and understand the difficulty of making mistakes. This creates an atmosphere of equality and shared vulnerability, making your subsequent feedback feel less like an attack and more like shared learning. It changes the dynamic from superior correcting subordinate to fellow human beings trying to improve. Illustrative examples. The story of Lincoln and his generals. Lincoln, while a brilliant strategist, often admitted his own strategic blunders or indecisiveness to his generals before offering them guidance. He understood that acknowledging his own fallibility made his suggestions more palatable and less like a direct reprimand. The example of a foreman to his workers. A foreman found his workers were not wearing their safety helmets. Instead of immediately reprimanding them, he gathered them and said, "Look, I know how uncomfortable these helmets can be. I used to hate wearing mine too, and I probably didn't always wear it when I should have. but I've seen firsthand how quickly accidents can happen. We need to wear them for our own safety. By admitting his past negligence, he built trust and convinced them to comply. The case of a parent and a child's mess. A parent might say to a messy teenager, "You know, when I was your age, my room was often a disaster zone. My parents used to get so frustrated, but I learned that keeping things tidy actually saved me a lot of time and stress in the long run. Maybe we could try organizing your space together this weekend." Practical application. When you need to correct someone, preface your feedback with a relevant personal anecdote about a time you made a similar mistake or faced a similar challenge. I remember when I first started in this role, I struggled with X too, and it led to Y. What I found helpful was, this makes your advice feel like a shared learning experience rather than a judgment. Principle 20. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Explanation. Instead of dictating what should be done, ask questions that lead the other person to the desired conclusion or action. This encourages initiative and makes people feel responsible for their decisions. Deep analysis. No one likes to be ordered around. Direct orders can strip people of their dignity and make them feel like mere cogs in a machine. Asking questions, however, stimulates their thinking, fosters a sense of ownership, and appeals to their desire for importance. When people feel they have contributed to a decision, or that the idea was their own, they are far more committed to carrying it out. It transforms compliance into commitment. Illustrative examples. The story of a department manager. A manager needed a specific task done but knew a direct order would be met with resistance. Instead, she called her team together and asked, "What's the best way we can tackle this challenge? What steps do you think are necessary? Who is best suited to handle each part?" By asking questions, she guided them to create a plan that was essentially her own, but because they felt they devised it, they executed it with enthusiasm. The case of the factory superintendent. A factory superintendent needed to implement a new production schedule. Instead of just posting new rules, he talked to his foreman, asking questions like, "What changes do you think we need to make to improve efficiency? How can we reduce waste? What would be the most effective way to streamline this process?" By soliciting their input, he gained their buy-in and cooperation. The parent and the reluctant child. Instead of telling a child, "Go clean your room now," a parent might ask, "What do you think needs to happen for your room to be ready for your friends to come over?" Or, "What's the first step you'll take to make your room tidy?" Practical application. In the workplace, when delegating or problem solving, use questions like, "What do you think we should do about this? How could we improve this process? Do you think this approach would work?" This encourages critical thinking and shared responsibility. In personal life, if you want someone to do something, frame it as a query or a suggestion. "Would it be helpful if we X?" Or, "What do you think about trying Y?" Principle 21. Let the other person save face. Explanation. This principle emphasizes the critical importance of allowing others to maintain their dignity and self-respect, even when they have made a mistake or are being corrected. Never publicly embarrass or humiliate someone. Deep analysis. The desire to save face is a powerful human motivator, particularly in many cultures. When someone is humiliated, their pride is deeply wounded, leading to bitterness, resentment, and a complete breakdown of trust. Even if you are technically right, destroying someone's dignity guarantees you will lose their cooperation and goodwill. Allowing someone to save face means giving them a graceful way out, offering a dignified retreat, or handling sensitive matters privately and with respect. Illustrative examples. The story of Woodrow Wilson and his assistant. President Wilson faced a difficult decision where one of his top assistants had publicly taken a stance that was now proving problematic. Instead of publicly reprimanding him, Wilson found a way to let the assistant retract his statement gracefully, offering an explanation that allowed him to save face without humiliation. The example of a supervisor and a production error. A supervisor discovered a worker had made a costly error. Instead of yelling at the worker in front of the team, the supervisor quietly called the worker aside, discussed the issue calmly, and focused on how to fix it and prevent it in the future, rather than assigning blame. This preserved the worker's dignity and ensured future cooperation. The case of a child's performance. A child performed poorly in a school play. Instead of criticizing them in front of others, a parent might say privately, "I know you tried your best, and it takes a lot of courage to be on stage. What did you learn from this experience?" This allows the child to reflect without feeling shamed. Practical application. Always offer constructive criticism in private. Never criticize, correct, or admonish someone in front of others. If someone makes a mistake, focus on the problem and the solution, not on shaming the individual. Give people opportunities to correct their own errors. Sometimes, simply ignoring a minor mistake allows someone to save face and encourages them to be more careful next time. Principle 22. Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. Explanation. This principle highlights the immense power of encouragement. By acknowledging and praising even small advancements, you motivate people to continue improving and strive for greater achievements. Deep analysis. We are all driven by the desire for recognition and appreciation. When our efforts are noticed and praised, it fuels our enthusiasm and reinforces positive behaviors. This principle focuses on positive reinforcement rather than punishment. It creates a growth mindset and builds confidence. Carnegie emphasizes that praise should be hearty, sincere and genuine, and lavish, given freely and abundantly, not sparingly. This builds a positive feedback loop that inspires continuous development. Illustrative examples. The story of a horse trainer. A renowned horse trainer never focused on what the horse did wrong. Instead, he would praise the slightest correct movement, even a small shift in balance or a slight bend. By consistently praising improvement, he trained horses to perform complex tasks that seemed impossible. This applies equally to humans. The example of a struggling student. A teacher had a struggling student who rarely participated. One day, the student timidly raised their hand and offered a partial answer. Instead of correcting the incompleteness, the teacher enthusiastically praised the student for their effort and for speaking up, saying, "That's a fantastic start. You're clearly thinking about this." This encouragement led the student to participate more actively in subsequent classes. The case of the sales team's incremental gains. A sales manager, instead of waiting for massive victories, celebrated small wins. A difficult cold call completed, a new lead generated, a challenging client meeting handled well. By praising these incremental improvements, he kept the team motivated and focused on continuous progress, which eventually led to overall higher sales. Practical application. Don't wait for perfection to offer praise. Acknowledge effort and progress. If a child makes their bed, even if it's not perfectly neat, praise the effort. If a colleague completes a difficult task, even if there are minor tweaks needed, commend their accomplishment. Be specific about what you're praising. I really liked how you handled that client's objection. That was very clever. This encourages them to repeat the desired behavior. Principle 23. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. Explanation. This principle suggests that if you want someone to develop a particular trait or perform a specific task, assign them a reputation for already possessing that quality or capability. People will strive to live up to the positive image you've created for them. Deep analysis. This leverages the power of self-fulfilling prophecy and the human desire for consistency. If you believe someone is capable, honest, or hardworking and express that belief, they are more likely to act in accordance with that positive reputation. It builds their confidence and gives them a standard to uphold. Carnegie emphasizes that it must be genuine. You must truly believe in their potential, not just flatter them. Illustrative examples. The story of the little boy and the messy room. A mother desperately wanted her son to keep his room tidy. Instead of nagging, she told him, "You're such a responsible and organized boy. I'm sure you can figure out the best way to keep your room tidy, just like you organize your toys so well." By giving him a reputation for being organized, she appealed to his pride, and he took ownership of the task. The example of a manager and a new hire. A manager needed a new, quiet employee to take on more leadership. Instead of forcing it, she told him, "I've noticed you have a very thoughtful and analytical mind. I have a feeling you're going to be one of our most dependable and insightful team leaders." By assigning him this positive reputation, he felt compelled to step up and began to exhibit those leadership qualities. The case of the troublesome student. A teacher struggled with a disruptive student. One day, the teacher told the student privately, "You know, I've always noticed you have a great sense of humor and you're very clever. I think you could be a real leader in this class if you chose to use those talents to help others." By giving him a reputation for being a potential leader, the student began to channel his energy more constructively. Practical application. When you want someone to improve in an area, praise them for existing strengths that are related, or tell them you believe they possess the capacity for that improvement. "I know you're great at problem solving, so I'm confident you'll find a way to handle this challenge." Or, "You're always so dependable, so I'm sure you'll manage this new responsibility with ease." This motivates them to live up to your positive expectations. Principle 24. Use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. Explanation. This principle advises that when you ask someone to do something difficult or change a habit, reassure them that the task is manageable and that they have the ability to succeed. Make the solution seem attainable. Deep analysis. When faced with a challenging task or a perceived flaw, people can become discouraged and resistant if they feel it's too hard or impossible to overcome. By minimizing the difficulty and expressing confidence in their abilities, you instill hope and motivation. It shifts their mindset from "I can't" to "I can try." This empowers them and makes them more likely to take action. Illustrative examples. The story of KT Duty. Duty, a sales manager, had a new salesperson struggling with sales calls. Instead of criticizing, Duty told him, "Look, calling these customers isn't as hard as it seems. Just tell them what you told me about how our product helps, and I'm sure you'll do great." It's really quite simple when you break it down. This encouragement made the task seem less daunting, and the salesperson's performance improved dramatically. The example of a child learning a new skill. If a child is struggling to tie their shoes, a parent might say, "You're almost there. It's just a little tricky at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's super easy. You're doing great." This positive framing reduces frustration and encourages perseverance. The case of an employee taking on a new role. An employee was hesitant to take on a new, more complex role. The manager encouraged her by saying, "You've got a fantastic analytical mind, and this new system is very logical once you get familiar with the basic steps. We'll break it down for you, and you'll be an expert in no time. It's much simpler than it looks." Practical application. When delegating a new or difficult task, emphasize its simplicity or break it down into manageable steps. This looks complicated, but it's really just 3 main parts, and you're already good at 2 of them. Or, when offering feedback on an area for improvement, frame it as a small adjustment. Your presentations are already excellent. A slight tweak to your opening could make them even more impactful. It's an easy fix. Principle 25. Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. Explanation. This is the culmination of all the previous principles. When you want someone to do something, frame the request in a way that genuinely benefits them, aligns with their desires, and makes them want to comply. It's about finding a win-win scenario. Deep analysis. This principle appeals to the deepest human motivations. People act on what they want. To make someone happy about doing what you suggest, you must understand their needs, desires, and aspirations, and then show them how your suggestion helps them achieve those. It involves considering their perspective, giving them a sense of importance, offering clear benefits, and creating a positive emotional connection to the task. It's about making them feel good about fulfilling your request. Illustrative examples. The story of an employee who refused a transfer. A company needed a key employee to transfer to a less desirable location. Instead of ordering him, the manager discussed how this move would be a stepping stone to a higher position he desired, offering specific details about the growth opportunities and how his unique skills were essential for this particular branch's success. The employee gladly accepted, seeing it as a personal advancement. The example of a child wanting a bike. A parent wanted their child to do chores. Instead of forcing them, the parent said, "If you help me with these chores every day this week, we'll save up for that new bike you've been wanting even faster. Imagine how much fun you'll have riding it." The child was happy to do the chores because it directly led to their desired outcome. The case of the restaurant manager. A restaurant manager wanted his staff to be more attentive to customers. Instead of giving a lecture, he initiated a customer service star program where staff received bonuses and public recognition for excellent service, appealing to their desire for extra income and importance. The staff became genuinely enthusiastic about providing better service. Practical application. Before asking someone to do something, ask yourself, how can I make this person want to do this? Connect the task to their personal goals, recognition, growth, or convenience. If you need a colleague to take on extra work, explain how it will give them valuable experience for a promotion. If you want your partner to try a new activity, highlight how it aligns with their interests or provides a benefit they care about. The goal is to make the desired action appear attractive and beneficial to them. Conclusion: the timeless wisdom of how to win friends and influence people. As we conclude our comprehensive journey through Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, it becomes clear that this isn't merely a book of tips or tricks. It's a profound philosophy rooted in understanding human nature and a timeless guide to building meaningful, impactful relationships. Carnegie's principles, though penned almost a century ago, are more relevant than ever in our modern world. In an age of digital connections, fleeting interactions, and often impersonal communication, the genuine human touch remains our most powerful asset. Whether you're navigating complex corporate environments, building a thriving business, strengthening family bonds, or simply trying to make new friends, the core tenets of sincere appreciation, empathy, respectful communication, and genuine interest in others are the bedrock of all success and happiness. This book teaches us that true influence doesn't come from manipulation or dominance, but from serving others' needs and making them feel valued. It's about shifting our focus from "what can I get" to "how can I understand and contribute to this person's well-being?" By applying these timeless lessons, from avoiding criticism and giving honest praise to listening intently and making others feel important, you're not just improving your communication skills, you're cultivating a richer, more fulfilling life filled with stronger connections and greater mutual understanding. The wisdom of Dale Carnegie encourages us to look inward, to master ourselves, and to approach every human interaction with kindness, respect, and a genuine desire to build bridges. This is the path to winning not just friends, but also respect, cooperation, and lasting influence. Call to action for your YouTube channel. If you found value in this detailed summary of how to win friends and influence people, I encourage you to dive deeper into the original book. Reading Dale Carnegie's own words, replete with his captivating stories and personal insights, is an experience that will undoubtedly transform your approach to human relations. What was the most impactful principle you learned today? Was there a specific example that resonated with you, or a principle you plan to apply in your life starting today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights and experiences inspire this entire community. If you enjoyed this audiobook summary, please like this video to support the channel, subscribe for more timeless wisdom, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into life-changing books. Thank you for listening, and remember, the path to a richer, more influential life begins with understanding and genuinely connecting with the people around you.